I'm really curious as to why there's only one specific group of people that are fighting for children in this country. That's probably my biggest concern as of right now. Like, why is there only one group of people that finds it concerning that there are full adult teachers that want to have conversations with children about sex and sexual positions and sexual orientation? Why? What's their agenda? Because I try to think, like, are they educators? Are they, because do they really feel the need to really have to educate students? Is that what they're trying to do? I mean, the real answer is obviously not, right? I mean, there's so many different things that you could teach kids on a daily basis. It doesn't have to be sex related. It could be anything related. You could teach them about psychology if you wanted to, which could kind of go hand in hand in these circumstances. But I just don't get why there's only one specific group of people that are trying to shut this down. We've seen it. We've kind of seen this attack on children happen so often. Because for a long time, there was a ton of people, again, one specific group of people that were saying, hey, there's this pedophile group and, you know, they're grabbing up a lot of teenagers and young kids, and they're part of this big elitist group, and there's Hollywood actors involved, and there's royalty involved, and there's politicians involved, and billionaires. And nobody believed it. Everybody made fun of us. Everybody said, that's not true. That's ridiculous. How could you say that? And they called us conspiracy theorists. But then what ended up happening, Jeffrey Epstein ends up happening. We find out that it is true. You know, and then he has an accomplice because he gets murdered. I mean, let's call it what it is. He was murdered. We know that. And his accomplice, she gets arrested. And in order for a lighter jail sentence, 20 years, which she should have gotten life, she gives up a list of names of prominent people in this world that would travel with Jeffrey Epstein and, you know, would be involved in these sort of sexual relations with underage kids. The list never comes out, right? The list was given to the United States government. The list never comes out. But again, how come we don't see anybody else fighting for this? I mean, there's one specific group of people that are arguing that this list should be out. Yet, we don't see that here. And I'm not really sure why. And I'm not really sure what the situation is with everybody and children. How did children become like this culprit? How did they become, you know, what's evil in this world? Because the truth of the matter is this: children are innocent. Let's put it in the same sense of like a dog. If you have a dog and you treat your dog a certain way, the dog's going to act a certain way, right? And children are very similar because they're young. They don't know the difference. They don't know right from wrong. They don't know what to do, what not to do. So as parents, and even as teachers, we need to be able to teach them and lead them in the right direction. But the obsession with having to teach them about things that the parents are telling you we don't want them to be taught is weird. And it's strange. Could it be that you want to teach them about maybe feelings that you personally have? It could be. That could be what it is. Unfortunately, school is not, you didn't become a teacher to teach children about your feelings. That's not what you did. You went to school to teach children about generalized education, our curriculum, okay? Your feelings mean nothing. And this has been a problem for a very long time, especially with teachers, because we've seen this happen far too often with liberal teachers, where liberal teachers are kind of shoving down their liberal hypocrisy down the kids' throats, you know, so many times. And it comes to this point where it's like, this needs to stop. And that's why people like Ron DeSantis are phenomenal, because he'll step into the classroom and he'll say, nope, you're not teaching that. It's not going to happen. And again, we saw it happen here with, it was, what was it, African American studies or black studies. I mean, Ron DeSantis shut it down. It was I believe it was a college course, except the entire idea of African American studies got hijacked. If you look at the history, if you look into the details of the course, it literally, queer theory is in there. There's a whole bunch of stuff that hijacks African American studies. And I know what people are going to say. They're going to say, well, queer theory is a part of the African American culture because there are gay people that are African American. Yes, understood. That doesn't mean anything. You're talking about African American studies. So you're supposed to talk about the African American history. Okay? There's a whole nother movement that talks about the LGBTQ. And if you want to create a course for that, maybe you could try going and doing that. But the truth of the matter here is that the African American Studies course got hijacked. And there are actually black people in this country today that they're fighting Ron DeSantis, saying, I cannot believe Ron DeSantis would not want us to learn about African American history. It's not at all what he's saying. As a matter of fact, there's plenty of African American history in our history books today. I learned about ancient Africa, okay? I learned about Martin Luther King. I learned about Malcolm X. I learned about a lot of these things, a lot of these situations. Now, if you feel like there needs to be more, or if you feel like maybe they need to get off the premise of civil rights, I would say that the most prominent part of black history in America is civil rights. I would say that due to black people in America, America became civilized because black people fought for their rights. They were mistreated. They fought for their rights and they got them. So it kind of opened the floodgates for everybody else. So when I talk about African American studies, civil rights is a big part of African American studies. Okay. So just to bring it back to where I was talking before, I mean, at the end of the day, I agree that DeSantis is doing the right thing by stepping into the classroom because I'm afraid of what's being taught to children. But you're seeing like these things get deepened into it. You're seeing them get like emboldened into it. And you're looking at it like, wait a second, this is supposed to be studying this. How did we get to this? Well, it's got a connection here, and no, doesn't happen. Shouldn't happen. Okay. And teachers in this country, they need to start standing up and speaking up. Because if they're seeing a curriculum coming in through their door that they need to teach their kids and they think that there's something that maybe shouldn't be taught or maybe the parents should teach their kids, they need to speak up. And unfortunately, we don't have that. And it's the same way as a lot of Americans today. They say, well, you know what? We criticize the police because the police, they don't speak up when they see another fellow coworker, doing something wrong. And they don't say, well, that person did something wrong. They don't do that. Well, teachers don't do that either. They don't. When have you ever seen a teacher stand up and go, listen, we shouldn't be teaching queer theory? Again, not saying it never happens. I'm just saying the generalized idea of it is never kind of platformed out there for everybody to be using. Never. So there's a lot that you have to kind of take in when it comes to this stuff. But for some reason, there's only one group of people that fights to make sure that children are not being indoctrinated. And indoctrination, I mean, parents indoctrinate their children. That's fine. Parents know what's best for their child. Every child is different. So a parent has to teach each child right from wrong. Has to teach them morals, values, tradition. That's important stuff. Teaching a child about the nuclear family. You get married, you have kids. I'm not saying everybody's going to do it. I'm not saying you force that on your kids. Obviously, they're too young to anyway. They can make that decision when they're 18 years old, when they're 25 years old, when they're 30 years old. They can make that decision on their own if they want to do that. But teaching them that this is fundamentally how societies grow is important. To know that when there's a two-parent household, when you see the statistics on a two-parent parent household, it's ridiculous. There's no comparison. There's no argument that a two-parent household is not the best form of family that you can have. No argument to it. So what exactly happens under these circumstances? Why exactly do people fight it? They fight it because there's a small margin of people, okay, that don't have it. They might not have the two-parent household. So what they're doing is they're arguing in favor for them, saying you don't need to have a two-parent household. There's no need for this nuclear traditional family. We don't need to have that. And you don't. I'm not saying that you do. But to have that foundation is important because, again, statistically, it shows that a two-parent household is the most progressed household that you can have. So let's stop kind of riding on this high horse of like, we need to defend every single individual person. It's the same thing as we saw with the trans community, okay? With the bathroom situation. The trans community said, we're not comfortable. You know, I'm a trans woman. I'm not comfortable going into the men's room. I want to go into the women's room. I understand. But why do we have to adhere to that? Well, because they're not comfortable. Okay, well, I'm not comfortable. I'm not comfortable with a trans man using the men's room. I'm not comfortable using the same bathroom as them. So at what point does this stop? So what's the problem? The problem isn't the bathroom. Because they're fighting this and, well, we're going to make non-binary bathrooms. So what was the problem? Because now you have men that are using the bathroom. So you're still going to be sharing the bathroom with a man. So what was the problem was the label on the door. That was the problem. It was just the label. All they had to do was walk in the door and use the bathroom. They were just upset because they felt like they were now having to be forced into a label. You're not. If you're a trans man and you went into the bathroom and you used the women's room, nobody's saying anything to you. Use it. So it had nothing to do with this, and that was kind of the problem here. What I think in America, at least, I think we take the smallest margin of people and we try to figure out a way to make them feel comfortable. And to a certain degree, it makes a little bit of sense because you do say like, well, maybe they don't feel like they're welcome. Maybe they don't feel accepted. You know, so how can we help them to feel accepted? I understand that. But that's more of a societal rule. It shouldn't be a standard rule that government is implementing. You know, the government shouldn't have to come in the middle of this and say, no, we're going to allow this and we're not going to allow that. That's ridiculous to do. And that's the problem. We have government overreach in this country that's beyond anything else. Besides probably the two biggest flaws that this country has today, self-responsibility and self-respect. I mean, we don't have either one of them. We don't have either one of them. Every time a situation happens, we try to point the finger elsewhere. We don't point the finger in the situation that occurred. The 5 Memphis police officers that brutally beat Tyree Nichols, as much as, they arrested them, they fired them from their jobs, but people went out there and they still pointed the finger in other directions. It's white supremacy, there's a systemic racism, this only happens to black people. This was pointed in a completely different direction. There were even people that defended the officers. There were people that came out and defended the officers saying, well, why were they arrested so quickly? Why were they fired and arrested so quickly? Oh, was it because they were black? That's a defense for the officers. I hope you understand that. That's a defense. Instead of saying, well, no, rightfully they should have been fired and charged. You came out and defended them by trying to compare. It's whataboutism at its finest. What about this situation? What about that situation? In 2020, the fight was for justice, right? In 2020, the fight was people are not being terminated from their jobs quick enough, police officers specifically, and they're not being charged for the crimes and they're not being convicted of the crimes. In 2023, it's no, we're mad that it happened. Because everything that occurred that you wanted to happen back in 2020 happened in 2023. So what are you mad about? You're mad that it occurred. And I'm sorry. I'm sorry that it occurred. But unfortunately, there is nothing that anybody in this world today could do to make sure that no crimes ever occur. There's nothing anybody could do. Crime will happen. Even those countries that you claim are great on crime and great on gun violence and great on police brutality, even those countries, they've got crime. Might not show it in gun statistics because they don't have any guns. It might not show it in police statistics because the police have no guns and the police have no authority. But there's crime. There's homicides, there's kidnappings, there's stabbings, there's murder, there's everything. So at the end of the day, you're never going to get rid of crime. Now, that doesn't mean we don't fight to try to minimize crime. I never said that. Let's minimize the crime. I'm all for it. Okay? But the idea that we're going to cause chaos every time a crime is committed is ridiculous. It just doesn't make any sense. It's not feasible, and it gets us nowhere. And the only people that benefit from this are the media personalities and the activists and the politicians. These are the people that benefit the most from chaos. So what happens? What happens next? I've said this plenty of times before. There's no really backing out of this. There's no reverse button here. The country is in trouble, and there's a lot going on. And I know I mentioned a lot here, but there really is a lot going on in this country today. How do we get out of it? Because we can't reverse. There's no reverse. So what do we do? How do we get out of it? The truth is, we start electing the right people. That's what we do. And by right, I don't mean Republican. I'm not, I'm saying we start electing the right people. Ron DeSantis for president is not a bad look. Donald Trump ain't a bad look either, but Ron DeSantis is not a bad look. Now, I'm not saying which one to go with or who to vote for. I'm just simply saying that look at what Ron DeSantis has done in Florida. He has stepped in where we have needed him to step in. And he's created a footprint. And that's important. If he feels that there's a curriculum that has been hijacked, he goes in there and he removes it. If he feels that there have been, restrictions from the country that are not that he doesn't think are feasible for the people living in his state, he will go in the other direction of it. And he's done this time and time again. So again, his track record's there, and he's got the opportunity. It really comes down to who's better and who's going to do what. That's not to say you don't vote for a Democrat. You can do anything that you want to. I'm just kind of putting things into perspective here. That's what we need. We need somebody like Ron DeSantis. And Trump is very similar. It's just Trump's concerns are a little bit different from DeSantis's concerns. Okay? Trump's concerns are more foreign concerns, which is 100% understandable. Trump's concerns are more, I guess you could say, I was going to say capitalism, but DeSantis is very capitalistic as well. But again, it's a more foreign concern. Trump's concerns are more, how do we stop the Democratic Party? That's Trump's concerns. DeSantis is more concerned with that stuff that you'll actually feel on a daily basis. What's being taught in schools and policing and stuff like that. That's what DeSantis would be focused on. So we're in 2023, and self-responsibility and self-respect, what I had mentioned before. I went through the self-responsibility. We're always pointing the finger in every other direction, but self-respect is right up there with it. They go hand in hand. Money became the biggest factor in America, and at one point it was, but in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, it kind of took a backstep. It did, and like nuclear family and making sure that we were following traditions became huge for us. But then in the 2000s, it all slipped away. And today, social media, OnlyFans, all these different picture and video programs that you could find. This is what the world is about. And people justify it because they go, well, I make money doing it. And that's the justification. I make money doing it. It's a sad justification. There's women that are completely naked on OnlyFans, and they're charging $4.99 a month, and they're making good money doing it. And when you say to them like this, it's not a very respectful thing that you're doing. Like, how do you live with yourself? And they're like, well, I make more money than you. Well, that's not an answer. That's not a good answer. Think about it. Like, okay, is your only concern in life to make money? And I know what some answers might be. They may be, well, that's a pretty big concern. I agree. But at what cost? At the cost of you humiliating yourself, at the cost of you showing your body to, millions of people, at the cost of your parents seeing this, your family members seeing this. At what cost? At one point in our recent history, we lived in a time where, porn and these magazines and websites, they were vilified. They were looked down upon. And especially because the industries were very dark, down, evil industries with very evil producers and organizations. But at the same time, you think OnlyFans is that much different? It's not. It's not much different. Does it give power a little bit more to people? Sure, to individual people. I'm sure it does. But there's a self-respect level there that just, it's defeating. It's terrible to look at and to think about, because at the end of the day, I have to think like, well, if I ever have a daughter and my daughter is 18 years old and she goes on OnlyFans, my friends got to see this. My other family members got to see this. And again, that's kind of the idea of shooting against the nuclear family, because we're just like, no, everybody's an individual. Just treat it like individuals. Who cares what other people see or hear or do? And it's like, I do. I care. I care what my family sees, and I care what they hear, and I care what they think, because it's my family. Now, granted, there are some people that don't get along with their family. Fine. Who cares what they think? I agree. Go on your own. Be an individual. Make your money. Do what you got to do. But at the same time, okay, you still have to remember that you are an individual on this earth, but you still have to remember you want people to respect you. You do. And right now, if you're an OnlyFans girl or you're a porn girl or whatever, it's not respectable. That goes for men too, but men on OnlyFans don't really make any money, not that I'm aware of at least. So in the porn industry though, it's the same thing. You would have to think, anytime that I do something, I always think, I'm like, what would my father think? What would my mother think? If they were ever to see me do this, would it be humiliating for them? Then I'm not going to do it. And even if you don't have a mother and father that like you or you don't get along with them, I would think, if I did have a son or a daughter, would it be humiliating to me? That should be your response. That's the world we live in. We live in this world where money is number one. And whoever makes more money is king or queen, right? And that's the justification for doing anything. We look at some of these guys on YouTube. We look at everything, not to knock Logan Paul at all, but look at his video from the Japanese forests, that whole video thing that happened with him there. How many views did that video get? Did that kind of break him out even more? People tried to cancel him, but did that kind of draw some attention to him? Maybe it did. Now, there's nothing he could do. He made a mistake. It was stupid, understood. And there's not much that you could do in that situation. But at the same time, would you want to be famous and rich on a video like that? I wouldn't. I would be too humiliated. I wouldn't be able to go around. People would, and especially when you're rich and famous, people would type it on every video that you post, everything. You would forever be in that situation. And there would be people that are genuinely hurt by what you did. That would be the worst part about it. I'm not talking about the trolls on the internet that just want to make you feel bad because you're making money. I'm talking about the people that were genuinely hurt by it. Family members of people that hurt themselves in that forest. It's tough. So again, money has just taken over, especially in this country. Money has just become king and queen. And we now justify everything based on money. There's no self-respect. We don't care about self-respect. We don't care about morals. We don't care about values. We don't care about tradition anymore. We care about money. And for a long time, America did a lot of things for money. Money was king for a long time. Between slavery and exploiting other countries and everything that America has done, a good portion of it has to do with money. Okay? But I do believe in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, I feel like things were changing. I feel like there was a lot more people from obviously prior generations, and I feel like there was a lot more immigrants coming in, and I just feel like people The American dream was, I'm going to get married and I'm going to have kids and I'm going to work every day and I'm going to retire when I'm 60. And I'm not saying it's not a scam, or I'm not saying it's something terrible, that it's not so terrible. I mean, maybe it is, depending on who you are. But at the end of the day, I mean, what's this life about? Is life really about traveling to Dubai 100 times? Is it really about eating dinner in Bora Bora? Is it really about, seeing every single part of the world? Is it really about flying private jets? Is that what it's about? I mean, I wouldn't think so. I would value life with life. I would say that the value of life is determined by life. The greatest moments in my life, the greatest times in my life, I mean, now I do okay, and I'm in a great place, and everything is turning out for me great. But the greatest times in my life were when I was 18, and it wasn't because I was partying and having a good time every single night. It was because I had everything that I needed. I had both of my grandmothers, I had my great uncle, I had all these friends of mine that are no longer with us today. I had everything. So at the end of the day, I learned now, me being 32 years old and looking around and going, yeah, I'm working to become rich. That's my goal, sure. But I'm not going to sit here and go, oh, I wish that something else wasn't happening. I wish that I wasn't 18. I'm not going to sit here. I could become the richest man in the world, and I would never sit here and go, well, when I was 18, it was great, but no, I'm always going to want to go back to when I was 18, no matter what. And when my kids are born and when our families are go through, yes, I'm going to sit here and go, this is the happiest that I'll ever be. And I would never go back to 18 because I wouldn't have my kids, of course. But there are things that I wish were different. Like, I wish that there were people that are gone that are back here. That's how I value life. I don't value life by $1. I don't say my life is worth how much money I have. I mean, that's ridiculous. And again, I just think in America, that's where we've gotten to. So try to value your everyday, the little things. They say, the days are long, the years are short, right? So at the end of the day, money means nothing. The years will go, they're going to pass. The decades will go, they're going to pass. You'll be 80 years old one day. You'll be 90, you'll be 100, you'll be on your deathbed, whatever the case may be, and you'll be gone one day, and that's going to be the end of it. So you could count as many dollars as you want to, but America's got to smarten up in this situation.